What if everything you believed about Meghan Markle's pregnancy was a carefully staged illusion, and the truth was finally exposed not by the press, not by the palace, but by a Hollywood icon standing in a New York bookstore? The air inside Barnes& Noble that evening was quiet, almost reverent. Rows of readers, eager fans, and casual passers-by filled every available seat, gathered not for scandal, not for a tabloid spectacle, but for something far more literary. Jennifer Beals, acclaimed actress, intellectual voice, and cultural icon, was holding a discussion on memoirs, truth, and the power of storytelling in modern media. Nothing about the event suggested what was about to happen. There were no cameras flashing, no TMZ reporters lurking near the cafe. It was, by all appearances, just another night in a New York City bookstore. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And then she said it. 5 words, delivered with surprising clarity. Her pregnancy was never real. There was a silence that fell over the crowd. Not the quiet that comes from shock, but the kind of paralyzing stillness that feels like a collective exhale being held mid-breath. Someone in the front row blinked. A coffee cup clinked on a saucer in the far back. Then a single voice asked the question that no one else dared to verbalize. "Wait, do you mean Meghan Markle?" Jennifer Beals didn't stammer. She didn't dodge. She simply nodded. And just like that, the bookstore erupted. Whispers turned into gasps. Phones were pulled from pockets. Some attendees leaned forward, hungry for more, while others sank into their seats, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. It wasn't just a celebrity making an offhand comment. It was a Hollywood insider confirming, in real time and in public, one of the most persistent, controversial, and tightly controlled rumors of the past decade. Jennifer Beals wasn't just another actress trying to stay relevant. She had built her reputation on substance, not spectacle. Best known for her work in Flashdance and the L Word, Beals had never been associated with gossip. She wasn't a social media firestarter or someone known for petty drama. She was respected, thoughtful, a woman who, when she spoke, didn't speak lightly. So why now? Why would someone like Jennifer Beals, with so much to lose and so little to gain, risk her credibility by wading into the murky waters of royal conspiracies? That question is what launched this investigation. This video will take you beyond the bookstore headlines and into the depths of what Jennifer Beals revealed. But more importantly, it will explore why so many people have questioned Meghan Markle's pregnancy to begin with. Because let's be clear, this wasn't the beginning of the rumor. It was merely the moment the dam burst. Long before Jennifer spoke, the internet was flooded with strange footage. Clips showing Meghan's baby bump moving in unusual ways. Photos where the bump appeared to shift sizes and shape within days, sometimes even hours. Public appearances where she squatted in high heels without hesitation, hugged people with her stomach collapsing inward, or clutched a belly that didn't respond to touch like a real pregnancy would. All dismissed, of course. Photoshop, they said. Poor angles. Bad lighting. But for many thousands, perhaps millions, those explanations weren't enough. And for a growing number of critics, the theory of a fake pregnancy wasn't just a conspiracy, it was a conviction. To understand the gravity of Beals' statement, you have to understand what it represents. Because this isn't just a question of whether Meghan wore a moon bump. It's a question of trust, of performance, of the blurred line between reality and image in the age of global celebrity. When a woman is presented to the world as a symbol of modern motherhood, empowerment, and resilience, and yet may have fabricated one of the most emotionally charged moments of her life, what does that say about authenticity? About intention? About the way public figures manipulate perception for power? This video will peel back each layer. We'll explore the original footage that sparked the early doubts. We'll review the inconsistencies that experts and body language analysts have flagged over the years. We'll listen to people who worked behind the scenes, costume designers, media handlers, even former royal aides who now say, in hushed tones, that something was always off. And we'll circle back to the woman who finally said what many suspected, Jennifer Beals, standing under fluorescent lights at a midtown bookstore, dropping a truth bomb that could change everything. There's a reason the pregnancy of a duchess carries weight. Royal babies aren't just born, they're introduced. They're symbols of continuity, legacy, tradition. When Diana held William outside St. Mary's Hospital in 1982, it wasn't just a baby being shown, it was the future king. When Kate cradled George, then Charlotte, then Louis, it was choreographed, elegant, deeply British. There were hospital steps, photo ops, nurses in uniform, blankets with royal crests. And then came Meghan, No hospital steps. No public delivery. No clear timeline. No official photographs in the first days. The public was told the Duchess went into labor and that the baby had already been born, all in one press release. And when the baby, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, was finally revealed, it was in an unusually awkward photo call where Meghan and Harry stood inside a palace hallway, flanked by a few members of staff. There was no movement, no audio, just a short clip of them smiling stiffly, Meghan holding the baby in a way that many mothers immediately noted as strange. Was that really the first time the world saw Archie? Or was it something else? Jennifer Beals' comment reignited these questions, forcing the public to revisit the footage, the timelines, the contradictions. It made people wonder why a woman as controlled and media-savvy as Meghan would, at times, appear so careless with the continuity of her own physical appearance. It made people wonder what was staged and what was spontaneous. And here's the part that few dared to ask. If Meghan faked her pregnancy, what else did she fake? That's the emotional powder keg beneath this story. This is not just about a moon bump or an awkward pose. It's about the trust of millions who watched her rise from American television star to global royal icon. It's about the young women who saw in her a beacon of modern strength, diversity, and breaking the mold. It's about the people who believed in her story, her struggle, her transformation. What if the most dramatic chapter of that story, the birth of her child, was a carefully orchestrated illusion? This video won't give you easy answers, but it will give you evidence, testimony, and the raw footage that's been circulating quietly, steadily, persistently for years. It will challenge what you've been told. It will make you rethink what you thought you knew. And it will make you wonder how much of the royal fantasy we've been fed is actually fiction. We will begin by going back to that moment, Barnes & Noble, New York City. We will reconstruct the scene, speak to people who were there, analyze why Beals said what she said, how she said it, and what the response has been since. From there, we'll trace the timeline, starting in 2018, when Meghan first appeared pregnant, and move step by step through the events that led so many to believe that something wasn't right. We'll follow the scent trail through media redactions, private bodyguards in delivery wards, and the sudden firing of hospital staff. We'll highlight the body double theories, the claims of a surrogate hidden from public view, and the royal protocols that were ignored quietly, but deliberately, during Meghan's pregnancy and delivery. And then we'll ask the bigger questions. Not just, was it fake? But, why would it be? What could have motivated such a deception? Was it for control? Privacy? Sympathy? Narrative power? And if so, what does that mean for how we, the public, consume modern royalty? This isn't just a video about scandal. It's a video about the collapse of narrative trust in an age of image-driven storytelling. It's about power, influence, and the delicate construction of celebrity mythology. It's about what happens when real-life fairy tales are built not on authenticity, but on performance. This is the story Jennifer Beals cracked open. And now, we're going to open it further. There are moments in modern public discourse that strike with such precision and unexpected clarity that they cut through the noise like a knife. Not because they're loud, not because they're rehearsed, but because they feel unfiltered, raw, even. That was the mood in the room at Barnes & Noble in New York City on the night Jennifer Beals said what so many others had whispered for years. Her pregnancy was never real. The setting wasn't dramatic. There were no flashing red carpets or paparazzi-fueled chaos. It was a literary event, understated and intellectual in tone. Beals had been invited to participate in a panel discussion on memoirs and celebrity truth-telling in the era of brand culture and internet performance. The discussion, moderated by a local journalist with a reputation for drawing out thoughtful commentary, had covered everything from the pressures of online authenticity to the rise of celebrity activism. Beals had been composed throughout, measured in her responses, offering insights drawn from her long career in film and television. She talked about the difference between character and persona, about how public figures often wear masks for survival. And then, as the conversation shifted toward the subject of women in the spotlight navigating motherhood, the tone of the room subtly shifted. An audience member, according to one attendee, a young woman sitting near the front, posed a question that was part curiosity, part confrontation. "Do you think," she asked, "that some celebrities use motherhood as a branding tool rather than a personal experience?" There was a pause, not a long one, just long enough to feel like something heavy had just landed. Beals answered carefully at first, noting that public figures often feel pressured to present idealized versions of their lives, especially women, especially mothers. But then, almost as an afterthought, she added the line that detonated the entire evening. Like with Meghan Markle, her pregnancy was never real. There was no laughter, no confused reactions, just stunned silence. Several eyewitnesses recall that BEALS didn't smirk. She didn't wink. She wasn't making a joke. She said it as if it were a fact she had assumed the world already knew. As if it were so obvious, so fundamentally understood within the entertainment industry, that it barely required elaboration. The moderator blinked, clearly caught off guard. A low murmur ran through the audience. Then came the follow-up from the same young woman, her voice audible even in the chaos. "Are you saying she faked it? Like, we're a bump?" BEALS nodded. Yes, it was a prosthetic. Everyone knew. The statement, casual and clear, hung in the air like smoke. There was a collective shuffle in the audience, people reaching for their phones, whispering to their neighbors, suddenly aware that they were no longer at a standard book event. They were witnesses to a bombshell moment. Within minutes, snippets of what BEALS had said began circulating on social media. No one had been live-streaming the event, but clips started surfacing from audience members who had been quietly recording on their phones. The footage wasn't crystal clear. It was shaky, angled from below, and partially obstructed by heads. But the audio was unmistakable. The first clip that went viral was only 12 seconds long. Like with Meghan Markle, her pregnancy was never real. That single sentence, posted by an anonymous TikTok account, garnered over 2 million views within 24 hours. What followed was digital combustion. Twitter threads exploded. Instagram stories reposted the clip in slow motion, splicing it next to side-by-side photos of Meghan from 2018 and 2019 that had long circulated as evidence of moon bump use. YouTube commentators rushed to upload reaction videos. Reddit forums that had long speculated about Meghan's pregnancy suddenly had validation from a known public figure, one with no apparent axe to grind. The shock wasn't just that someone had said it. It was who had said it. Jennifer Beals wasn't a gossip columnist. She wasn't an ex-royal aide with a book to sell. She wasn't a jilted friend or a loudmouth podcast host. She was, by all accounts, a respected actor, known more for quiet strength than controversy. So why would she say it? What compelled her to speak a truth so volatile, so tightly controlled by the Sussex PR machine? According to a close friend of Beals, who later spoke to an independent entertainment blog on condition of anonymity, Jennifer hadn't gone to the event with the intention of outing Meghan. In fact, she reportedly hesitated before answering the question. But when it was asked, directly, without euphemism, she decided to tell the truth as she understood it. It wasn't meant to be cruel, the friend said. It was just meant to be honest. Jen's always been about that. If something's fake, she'll say it's fake. And she believed Meghan faked it. She wasn't trying to attack, she was just done pretending. The aftermath was predictably chaotic. Meghan's supporters were quick to denounce Beals. Articles emerged labeling her as misinformed, dangerous, and part of a broader misogynistic narrative. PR experts went into overdrive, spinning the moment as a mistake, a misstatement, an offhand comment that didn't reflect reality. But something about Beals' tone, her calm, unaffected delivery, made it hard to write off. She didn't flinch. She didn't retract. She didn't release a statement walking anything back. And that silence spoke volumes. What Beals did, knowingly or not, was rupture a tightly managed illusion. She opened a door that others in Hollywood had been peeking behind for years. Several industry insiders have since come forward quietly, anonymously, to confirm that the moon bump theory was more than just an internet myth. According to one former costume technician for a major streaming network, discussions about Meghan's wardrobe and belly padding were common in studio circles. It wasn't a conspiracy, she said. It was a whisper, a known thing people just didn't talk about publicly. Another entertainment journalist claimed that editors were often instructed to avoid mentioning Meghan's belly in any unusual context. It was a hands-off subject, protected, curated, and spun with military precision. So when Beals broke that silence, it wasn't just a moment of drama. It was a fracture in the wall of narrative control. Even major media outlets took notice. Though many refused to cover the comment directly, perhaps for fear of legal repercussions, they alluded to it through roundabout editorials and interviews with media psychologists discussing the consequences of reckless speech and the fragility of public perception. But the public had already heard it, and they believed it. Many, at least. And while Jennifer Beals went about her life with no apology and no clarification, Meghan Markle remained notably silent. Her press team declined to comment. There were no Instagram posts addressing the controversy, no public appearances to divert attention. The Sussex brand, which usually met fire with fire, suddenly went quiet. That silence added fuel to the fire. Because sometimes, when the truth finally cracks the surface, the only response left is none at all. The doubts didn't start with Jennifer Beals. They didn't begin with a single viral video or tabloid headline. They began with a glance, a pause, a whisper, a moment when something didn't quite add up, when reality and image drifted too far apart. From the very first time Meghan Markle cradled her baby bump in public, there were people, ordinary viewers, body language experts, mothers, doctors, who noticed something unusual. And those quiet murmurs of disbelief snowballed into a years-long undercurrent of suspicion that even the most carefully orchestrated media campaigns couldn't fully suppress. It all started in October 2018, during a royal tour in Australia, New Zealand, Tonga, and Fiji. Just hours after Meghan and Harry arrived in Sydney, Kensington Palace confirmed what many had already guessed: the Duchess of Sussex was pregnant. The announcement, timed to coincide with the tour's kickoff, was widely celebrated. Headlines declared it a joyous moment. The world congratulated them. But within days, something began to feel off. Video clips from the tour quickly spread across social media. In some, Meghan's bump appeared prominent and round. In others, taken just a day apart, it looked nearly invisible beneath flowing garments. At times, it seemed unusually high on her torso. In others, strangely low. The inconsistency didn't go unnoticed. Posts on Twitter and Instagram began pointing out the shifting size and position of the bump. Was it the camera angle, the fabric, or something else entirely? Mothers who had been through pregnancy themselves started asking questions. They commented on how freely Meghan moved, how easily she crouched and stood without any sign of discomfort. Several videos showed her bending at the waist, something that becomes physically difficult, if not impossible, for most women beyond the second trimester. Others pointed out how Meghan often walked in heels, even well into the pregnancy, with a stride that didn't reflect the usual center of gravity adjustment pregnant women naturally adopt. Then came the cradling. Meghan's frequent habit of resting her hands on her bump became a topic of discussion across all corners of the internet. While it's not uncommon for expectant mothers to cradle their bellies, Meghan's repeated, often exaggerated gestures were perceived by some as performative. Critics labeled it as overly rehearsed. Supporters said it was maternal instinct. But others wondered if the gesture served a secondary purpose, drawing attention to something that wasn't organically present. The speculation grew during a January 2019 visit to the MEGHAN animal welfare charity. Photos from that day show Meghan seated with her legs crossed, back upright, speaking effortlessly with staff and volunteers. In several images, the shape of her belly appeared angular under her dress, far more pointed than rounded. Viewers online shared the images side by side with photos from earlier that week, where the bump looked round and much larger. Then there was the infamous folding bump moment. During a public engagement, Meghan was filmed walking across a stage in a fitted cream dress. As she took her seat, her stomach appeared to collapse inward momentarily, folding in a way that defied the natural rigidity of a pregnant abdomen. The video was slowed down, zoomed in, analyzed frame by frame. Theories erupted. Was it a dress malfunction? A trick of the fabric? Or a physical impossibility that pointed to something more artificial? The term moon bump entered the mainstream vocabulary shortly thereafter. Originally coined in online forums, it referred to the prosthetic silicone or foam baby bumps used by actresses in television and film. Manufacturers of these products boast their realism, complete with lifelike weight, movement, and shape. They can be strapped on, velcroed, or worn like undies. Several amateur investigators began comparing images of known moon bump designs to the way Meghan's bump appeared under certain clothing. The similarities, at times, were striking. One image compilation showed the outline of a known moon bump model next to a snapshot of Meghan's silhouette at 6 months pregnant. The curvature, proportion, and height placement were nearly identical. For every claim of deception, there were defenders. Meghan's supporters accused critics of misogyny, of nitpicking a woman's body under the pretense of concern. And in many cases, that defense was valid. Celebrity women have long been subject to unfair scrutiny. Every pound gained or lost, every choice in clothing or posture interpreted with invasive curiosity. But what made Meghan's case different was the accumulation of inconsistencies, not one or two, but dozens. Another moment that raised eyebrows occurred during a February 2019 panel discussion for International Women's Day. Meghan sat on a high chair, crossed her legs comfortably, leaned forward repeatedly, and delivered lengthy, impassioned remarks. Body language analysts later commented on her posture and ease of movement. They noted a conspicuous absence of typical third trimester discomfort. No fidgeting, no shifting weight, no back support. At that point in her timeline, Meghan would have been around 8 months pregnant. Then came the absence of key pregnancy milestones that typically accompany royal births. There was no hospital press appearance, no media-friendly exit from the maternity wing like Princess Diana or Kate Middleton had done. There was no traditional baby reveal on the steps of St. Mary's Hospital. Instead, Buckingham Palace announced that Meghan had gone into labor and that Archie had already been born, all within the same press release. The timeline felt rushed, confused, as if the public was being handed a story already in progress. When Meghan and Harry finally introduced Archie to the world, it was not in a hospital, but within the halls of Windsor Castle. The baby, swaddled in white, remained almost entirely hidden. The brief video showed Meghan and Harry smiling, answering a few questions. But the atmosphere felt scripted, controlled. Some viewers even questioned whether the baby was a doll, an accusation dismissed at the time as absurd, but which gained traction as more footage was dissected. All of this culminated in a strange paradox. The more Meghan appeared in public during her pregnancy, the more doubts seemed to multiply. It wasn't just conspiracy theorists or fringe bloggers. Mainstream media figures began hinting at the oddity of the Sussexes' approach to pregnancy and childbirth. But few dared to say the quiet part out loud. Not until Jennifer Beals. In retrospect, it becomes clear why her words carried such impact. She wasn't dredging up a new theory. She was affirming one that had been hovering just outside the margins of polite conversation for years. A theory that had been whispered in VIP lounges, debated on private message boards, and cautiously referenced in editorials that tiptoed around legal risk. Jennifer Beals gave it voice. And in doing so, she tapped into a long, complex history of suspicion, one built not on malice, but on instinct, on the sense that something didn't quite match, that a woman so carefully curated in every other aspect of her image might have taken one step too far in her quest for control. To understand the gravity of what Jennifer Beals said, that Meghan Markle's pregnancy was never real, you must first understand the mechanics of the theory she validated. It centers around a product widely used in film and television production, the moon bump. Far from being a fantasy born out of internet speculation, the moon bump is a real, tangible item. It's mass-produced, customizable, and worn regularly by actresses, models, and performers who need to appear pregnant on camera or stage. It's molded from high-grade silicone or lightweight foam and is designed to replicate the shape, movement, and presence of a baby bump, often with startling realism. Moon bumps come in different trimesters. They vary in size, curve, skin tone, and flexibility. Some attach with medical-grade adhesive. Others are integrated into bodysuits or compression garments that strap around the waist and shoulders. Designed for believability, they mimic the weight distribution of a growing fetus. Many include padding in the back to counterbalance the protruding belly and simulate how the body naturally adjusts during pregnancy. High-end versions even come with a faint simulation of fetal movement, tremors, or soft kicks that respond to touch or motion. In Hollywood, they're an open secret. Costumers, stylists, and set designers work with these prosthetics as casually as they work with wigs or body doubles. They are stored in production trailers. They are logged into wardrobe inventories. And they are molded to fit each actor's frame in a way that passes for genuine in high definition. So why, in Meghan Markle's case, has this product, originally meant for fictional storytelling, become a source of public suspicion? It comes down to one thing: consistency. Or rather, the lack of it. When a real pregnancy progresses, the physical transformation follows a gradual, predictable arc. The body changes, not just the belly, but the hips, face, posture, and movement. A woman's breathing pattern shifts. Her balance is affected. Her gait changes. Meghan, throughout her widely photographed pregnancy, seemed to defy those norms. Her bump appeared larger one day, smaller the next. Sometimes it was round and high, other times long and low. In some images it pressed firmly against the fabric of her dress. In others it floated unnaturally. Theories began circulating that she was wearing different prosthetics on different occasions. That she was adjusting the look and shape of her bump based on the outfit, the camera angle, or the public context of each appearance. Internet investigators, some mothers, some skeptics, some just detail-oriented observers compiled entire folders of screenshots comparing her bump's positioning during events held just days apart. The anomalies were hard to ignore. For instance, during a royal engagement in late 2018, Meghan appeared in a tight black dress, her bump pushing firmly outward. Just 2 days later, she appeared in a loose, light-colored ensemble with virtually no bump visible beneath the fabric. Some wrote it off as clever wardrobe styling. Others saw something more deliberate proof, they argued, of a physical inconsistency that couldn't be explained by fashion choices alone. Then came the public moments that raised even more eyebrows. One video showed Meghan sitting down and standing up repeatedly during a public forum. She moved swiftly, comfortably, without signs of the stiffness or abdominal restraint typical of women in late pregnancy. In another clip, captured during a photo call, her bump appeared to shift as she turned to the side, folding subtly at the midline. Critics paused the video, zoomed in, and analyzed frame by frame. The fold, they argued, suggested a prosthetic, a bendable material not consistent with a human stomach full of amniotic fluid. Further feeding the theory were reports of Meghan allegedly canceling or limiting photo opportunities where uncontrolled imagery might be captured. At several public events, press photographers were confined to specific angles or limited time slots. Independent cameras were banned. On at least one occasion, members of the public were asked not to photograph the Duchess at all as she walked past. Was this an effort to maintain privacy during pregnancy, or an effort to control the visibility of something more artificial? As the theory gained momentum, professional costumers and special effects artists began weighing in anonymously through forums, blog interviews, and Reddit AMAs. Several acknowledged that the movement seen in certain Meghan videos looked off to them. One costume designer, with decades of experience on both stage and screen, said, "I've watched those clips. I've worked with dozens of moon bumps. The folding? That's not natural. That's a prop." Yet no physical evidence ever emerged. No photo of a dressing room containing prosthetics. No supplier leaked an order. No member of her immediate staff confirmed the use of a moon bump. And without that, many mainstream outlets avoided the theory entirely, fearful of reputational damage or lawsuits. But there was one source that consistently pointed to something suspicious: her clothes. In real pregnancies, the transition from fitted to flowing garments usually reflects the body's natural expansion. But Meghan alternated frequently between clingy couture and oversized coats, sometimes on the same day. Observers questioned how her bump could change so dramatically in the span of a few hours. Her coats, sometimes worn in warm weather, appeared more designed to hide than to shield. Even stranger were the times Meghan was photographed clutching her bump with one hand while the other grasped her coat tightly closed over it. These images often showed her pulling the fabric taut against her belly, almost as if adjusting the position of whatever was beneath. If it was a moon bump, as Jennifer BEALS claimed, it would explain many things. It would explain the erratic size and shape. It would explain the folding. It would explain the curiously stiff moments caught on camera. And it would explain the absence of typical maternity behavior during public engagements. But it would also raise larger questions. Why fake it? Why would a woman with so much global attention, so many resources, and access to every form of protection and privacy choose to stage a pregnancy? Some suggest it was about control. That by appearing pregnant, Meghan could direct the narrative. A pregnancy would secure public sympathy, create a bond with royal tradition, and enhance her image as a modern maternal figure in the monarchy. Some believe that Meghan wanted to avoid the scrutiny of a hospital birth or the risk of media intrusion into a surrogate arrangement. Others speculate she may have had fertility issues and used surrogacy privately but chose not to disclose it to avoid press intrusion or public judgment. And then there's the most cynical theory, that the bump was part of a carefully orchestrated performance designed to generate press, reshape her brand, and secure her status within the royal family. Whatever the motive, the theory persisted because it wasn't just based on conjecture, it was based on visual evidence, behavioral analysis, and now, a public declaration by someone who had no reason to lie. Jennifer Beals' comment didn't invent the moon bump theory. It confirmed what many had suspected. And once she said it out loud, the dam broke. More people felt emboldened to share their thoughts. More footage was recirculated. More analysis began. What was once considered fringe was now entering mainstream discourse. And yet, Meghan remained silent. No rebuttal. No lawsuit. No statement. Just silence. Perhaps that silence is telling. From the moment the royal family announced Meghan Markle's pregnancy in October 2018, public interest exploded. Every appearance she made was scrutinized under a magnifying glass. Her outfits, her gestures, her words. But what started as harmless fascination quickly evolved into something more complicated. A noticeable number of royal watchers, fashion analysts, body language experts, and medical professionals began to point out that something didn't add up. The first wave of raised eyebrows came during the Australia and New Zealand royal tour in October 2018. It was just hours after arriving in Sydney that Kensington Palace officially confirmed Meghan's pregnancy, and the Duchess appeared glowing, energized, and poised. But within the first week of appearances, observant viewers noticed something odd. Her bump seemed to fluctuate in both shape and size. At the Taronga Zoo, she wore a white sleeveless dress that clung tightly to her body. Her bump was round and prominent. Just 2 days later in Fiji, she appeared in a long-sleeved blue dress with a completely flat silhouette. Photos from both events, placed side by side, began circulating online. Critics asked, how could a baby bump disappear so quickly? The royal tour was a blur of engagements, reflaying ceremonies, receptions, walks with the public, and Meghan seemed tireless. She squatted down to greet children, bent forward easily to examine gifts, and walked for long distances in heels. These actions are not impossible for pregnant women, but they raised questions among those who had experienced pregnancy firsthand. One widely shared clip showed her crouching all the way down and bouncing back up without even the hint of effort, which seemed inconsistent with someone well into her second trimester. The coat clutch moment became another viral event. In November 2018, during a remembrance service, Meghan wore a black coat buttoned at the top with the lower half left loose. A video surfaced of her tightly grabbing the coat and subtly adjusting it over her stomach. To many, it looked like she was repositioning a bump. At one point, the coat appears to lift unnaturally, almost as if it were being held up from underneath. Viewers slowed down the footage, zoomed in, and pointed to a brief moment where the fabric collapsed slightly inward, creating a horizontal crease across her belly. The speculation gained even more momentum during her surprise visit to the British Fashion Awards in December 2018. Meghan wore a sleek, one-shouldered black velvet gown. Her bump was sharply outlined, looking fuller and firmer than it had during the remembrance service just weeks earlier. The contrast was striking. But what really set off alarm bells for skeptics was a moment on stage when she cradled her belly, stepped back from the podium, and seemed to shift her weight, at which point the bump appeared to wobble. Not subtly. Noticeably. From a camera angle to the left of the stage, you can see her hand pressing slightly on the bump, and as she moves, the rounded shape bounces with a flexibility that many viewers described as unnatural. Women familiar with late pregnancy noted that a baby bump full of fluid and a growing fetus doesn't jiggle like a bag of rice. It's firm, taut, heavy. This movement, they argued, looked like foam. The next suspicious moment came during a January 2019 visit to the Mayhew Animal Home. Meghan's dress that day was a snug cream-colored knit piece that hugged her midsection tightly. Several photographers caught shots of the bump from a low angle, and observers quickly began pointing out how unusually angular it looked. Instead of a soft dome, the belly looked like a triangle, sharp at the sides, and unusually flat across the bottom. Some theorized that the undergarment housing the moon bump may have shifted, creating a crease that wasn't intended to be visible. Perhaps the most iconic and oft-referenced public event was the International Women's Day panel discussion in March 2019, just 2 months before Meghan was due to give birth. She arrived in a sleek, form-fitting black and white dress, her bump appearing large and pronounced. As she sat down on the high stool and crossed her legs, she leaned forward to speak into the microphone. The entire movement was smooth, unstrained, effortless. No bracing of her lower back. No shifting or adjustment. For women who had given birth, this behavior raised immediate red flags. One viewer commented online, at 8 months pregnant, "I couldn't even sit on a normal chair without support, let alone cross my legs and lean forward for 30 minutes. Another bizarre moment came when Meghan visited the Natural History Museum in London that same month. Dressed in a white tailored coat, she was filmed walking upstairs and into the venue. In one frame, the bottom edge of her coat lifts just enough to reveal a visible line across her dress, what appeared to be the edge of a strap or padding. The outline didn't match maternity shapewear or undergarments. Instead, it had the appearance of an exterior edge, as if something was velcroed or belted beneath. The Royal Albert Hall appearance in January 2019 was also heavily analyzed. Meghan's dress was a glittering floor-length gown that highlighted every curve. During the event, she was seen cradling her bump extensively, far more than in previous appearances. At times, her hand moved in a way that seemed less like a natural gesture and more like someone adjusting the position of a prop. In one image, her hand presses into her side and the bump subtly shifts forward, changing its angle as she moves to the next pose. Then came the photo call after the birth of Archie. Unlike the carefully choreographed royal baby reveals that followed Prince William and Kate Middleton's deliveries, Meghan and Harry's first appearance with their son was behind closed palace walls. No hospital, no public viewing, no standard timing. The child was wrapped in a blanket, held in Harry's arms, with Meghan standing beside him in a crisp white trench-style dress. Her body appeared unchanged from just weeks earlier, flat stomach, no swelling, no postpartum signs. Viewers were quick to point out that Meghan looked more like someone hosting a press event than a new mother 2 days postpartum. For comparison, Kate Middleton had appeared outside the hospital mere hours after delivery, clearly swollen and wearing maternity wear that acknowledged the post-birth reality. Diana did the same. Meghan's photo call felt detached, like a moment curated for magazine covers rather than royal tradition. One more event that fueled the theory happened quietly, but left a permanent mark in the minds of skeptics. In late 2019, after Meghan and Harry's first holiday break with baby Archie, a series of paparazzi shots captured them on a walk in Canada. Meghan was pushing a baby stroller. Observers noted that the carriage seemed unusually empty, no movement, no toys, and a posture that suggested she was posing more than parenting. A still frame from that walk became part of countless theory threads, captioned simply, "Where is Archie?" All of these events, on their own, might be explainable. A wardrobe wrinkle, a camera distortion, a moment of odd posture. But together, they tell a story, not of a mother experiencing the emotional highs and physical tolls of pregnancy, but of a woman performing a role. Each appearance layered on top of the last until the contradictions were too loud to ignore. And with every new public engagement, Meghan seemed to oscillate between meticulous presentation and odd missteps that only fueled the theory that what the world was seeing wasn't a real pregnancy, but a carefully crafted illusion. In the court of public opinion, speculation often thrives in the absence of concrete answers. But when experts start weighing in, especially those with years of experience in relevant fields, what once sounded like theory begins to feel like testimony. And when it came to Meghan Markle's pregnancy, a steady stream of doctors, body analysts, and image professionals gradually entered the conversation, offering insights that ranged from cautious curiosity to outright skepticism. One of the earliest medical professionals to quietly express concern was a retired obstetrician based in Los Angeles. Speaking anonymously to a private online forum where professionals discuss public health narratives in the media, she wrote, "I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I have never seen a woman in her 3rd trimester move, bend, and posture the way Meghan did without any visible strain. It defies basic understanding of how the human body works during pregnancy." Her statement wasn't shared publicly, but it circulated widely among alternative news platforms. Her observation wasn't about gossip. It was rooted in physiology. During the 3rd trimester, the growing uterus puts pressure on the diaphragm, making deep breaths more laborious. Balance shifts significantly, causing changes in posture, stride, and even how a woman sits down or gets up. That's not just anecdotal, that's anatomy. Many doctors and midwives, when shown video clips of Meghan squatting, quickly rising, or walking in tight heels without altered posture, responded with one variation or another of the same phrase, "It doesn't look right." Another physician, Dr. Rebecca H., a maternal health specialist with 17 years in clinical practice, watched the footage of Meghan at the International Women's Day panel. Her professional take was blunt. There's no way she's 8 months pregnant in that clip. Her torso moves freely, her spine isn't compensating for the weight, and there's no abdominal resistance. When asked what could explain the discrepancy, she said, "The most plausible explanation, barring a medical anomaly, is that she wasn't pregnant at all." Maternity stylists, those who help women dress through every stage of pregnancy, also chimed in, albeit more cautiously. One stylist who had worked with clients in Hollywood and London remarked, "Real pregnancy weight distributes differently. You can hide the bump with styling tricks early on, but not after 6 months." Yet Meghan went from fitted to flowy to fitted again with no consistency. It wasn't bump-friendly styling, it was bump management. She recalled one event where Meghan wore a body-hugging evening dress with a sharp, protruding belly. Days later, she was seen in a loose-fitting coat with a dramatically reduced silhouette. "It's possible," the stylist added, "but highly unlikely. Most women can't control their bump size like that from week to week. What I saw didn't match the progression I know well." Then came the body language experts. Judy James, a well-known British analyst with a long track record of interpreting political and royal gestures, was asked in multiple interviews about Meghan's behavior during pregnancy. While never directly calling it inauthentic, James did say that Meghan's bump touching was unusually performative and that her posture remained surprisingly symmetrical late into the pregnancy. Something not typically seen with a growing baby altering the body's center of gravity. "It's the way she moves," another body analyst said. "There's no subtle adaptation. Pregnant women, whether they want to or not, adjust their gait, their shoulders, their pace. But Meghan seems choreographed. It's like someone taught her how to act pregnant instead of her just being pregnant." Medical professionals also raised questions about postpartum appearances. After Archie was born, Meghan re-emerged in public looking virtually unchanged. Her face was slim. Her posture was firm. There were no signs of postpartum bloating or recovery. For many, this was the final red flag. In every other royal birth, the mother took visible time to recover. Diana appeared pale and swollen after William's birth. Kate Middleton wore forgiving dresses and displayed the well-known baby bump after birth. Meghan, on the other hand, looked as if she had never been pregnant at all. Plastic surgeons, while unwilling to speculate publicly due to ethical concerns, quietly acknowledged that recovering so quickly, if the pregnancy had been real, would be extremely rare. One surgeon said, "Unless she had surgical interventions or is genetically unique, that turnaround time raises legitimate questions." Beyond physical experts, media analysts began examining the PR side of the pregnancy narrative. A media strategist who had worked with celebrity brands noted, "The way Meghan's pregnancy was revealed, documented, and then abruptly closed off is not standard royal protocol, it's Hollywood branding. The tightly controlled images, the emphasis on symbolism, the avoidance of medical specifics, it all points to image management." He continued, "In a standard royal pregnancy, there are natural rhythms. Hospital announcement, birth photos, the public engagement cycle. Meghan's version was edited, stylized. It felt more like a press campaign than a real family event." This perspective aligned with that of a former royal correspondent who observed, "There was a script. You could feel it. Every appearance was a scene. Every outfit, every pose, every hand gesture, it was too rehearsed. It was less about being a mother and more about playing one." Interestingly, there were even costume designers, those familiar with creating prosthetic bumps for stage and screen, who shared private commentary with YouTubers and independent reporters. One designer, who had worked on Broadway and film sets, studied several clips of Meghan's appearances and concluded, "The way the fabric moves, the way the belly folds slightly under pressure, it matches the materials we use in theatrical pregnancy bellies. I can't say definitively, but what I saw wasn't natural." Even a former maternity nurse, writing in a now-deleted blog post, broke down Meghan's appearance at a charity event where she leaned against a table, belly forward, pressing the bump outward. "A pregnant woman that far along would avoid leaning like that," she wrote. "It's uncomfortable and awkward." But Meghan did it with ease. Either she's uniquely built, or she was never carrying at all. The silence from medical institutions also raised eyebrows. When Meghan gave birth, the lack of hospital footage, nurses, or even confirmation from a medical professional sparked unease. In royal tradition, the birth certificate usually lists a hospital and physician. But Meghan's documents were delayed, redacted, and vague. Medical professionals who had typically been proud to be involved in royal births were silent. No glowing press releases. No interviews. No acknowledgement. Taken individually, each expert's comment might be easy to dismiss. But collectively, they form a mosaic of concern. The questions weren't being asked by conspiracy theorists, but by people who had dedicated their lives to understanding the human body, its movements, and its transformations. Doctors, stylists, analysts, and designers were all seeing the same thing. They just weren't saying it until someone like Jennifer BEALS broke the silence. She gave them permission to speak. And once the silence cracked, the pattern became hard to ignore. It wasn't a single moment that cast doubt. It was the sum total of every public appearance, every medical oddity, every inconsistency, and every tightly controlled photo opportunity. The experts didn't have access to Meghan's medical records. They didn't need to. The evidence was in how she moved, how she posed, how she shifted when no one was supposed to be watching. Now, the world was watching closer than ever. For centuries, the British royal family has been bound by an unspoken creed: never complain, never explain. That rule has preserved the monarchy through war, scandal, abdication, and divorce. But beneath that stoic surface lies an intricate network of aides, advisors, private secretaries, footmen, and courtiers who serve not just as logistical machinery, but as the quiet keepers of royal truth. And in the case of Meghan Markle's pregnancy, it was within this tightly held circle that some of the most unsettling observations were made, privately, discreetly, and only much later whispered beyond palace gates. It began, as these things often do, with resignation. Within the first year of Meghan and Harry's marriage, a string of palace staff either stepped down, transferred to other departments, or simply left royal service altogether. Among them were Meghan's personal assistant, Melissa DeBody, who reportedly quit under emotional strain, Samantha Cohen, the Queen's former assistant private secretary, who had been asked to guide Meghan through royal life but also resigned, and Amy Pickerel, another close aide tasked with supporting the Duchess during her public engagements. While resignations in high-pressure environments aren't unheard of, the volume and timing raised eyebrows. Multiple resignations within a single royal household in less than 12 months was not normal. And those who left, though publicly silent, were not shy about dropping hints in private. One former royal house staffer, who had served the family for over a decade, revealed in an off-the-record interview with a UK-based biographer that something about the entire pregnancy period didn't sit right with anyone behind the scenes. According to him, staff were instructed to never ask questions, never comment, and never deviate from the provided schedule. That alone wasn't new. Royal protocol is strict, but the tension, he said, was different this time. It wasn't just secrecy. It was paranoia. He recalled an unusual incident where Meghan, in her third trimester, walked briskly through a hallway inside Frogmore Cottage and bent forward to retrieve a dropped scarf. There was no hesitation, no discomfort. It was like she'd forgotten she was supposed to be pregnant. I remember thinking, it didn't look right. Another palace insider, a female aide who had worked with multiple royal households, shared a similar experience during a photo shoot preparation. Meghan reportedly arrived in a snug designer dress, posed for photos, and then changed into another outfit within minutes. What stood out, she said, was that her bump appeared dramatically different in both dresses. It's normal for clothes to shape the body differently, but the bump actually moved higher. We'd never seen that with Kate, or anyone else. Security personnel, too, had their suspicions. One former protection officer, who had rotated on Meghan's team during 2019, recalled a peculiar policy where no staff, security included, were allowed in her private suite during dressing sessions. Even the Queen doesn't require that, he remarked. We're always discreet, but the level of shielding around her personal space during the pregnancy was beyond excessive. It felt like she was hiding something. Then there were the delivery plans, or rather, the lack thereof. When Kate Middleton gave birth to all three of her children, the procedures were transparent, rehearsed, and accessible to press, down to which entrance the ambulance would use. Medical teams were publicly acknowledged, and the births followed protocol expected by the media and the public. But with Meghan, it was different from the beginning. Royal correspondents were left in the dark. No confirmed hospital. No prearranged press stand. No names of attending doctors. Aides handling media communications were reportedly given minimal access to birth plans, and many were told to simply wait for further instruction. One royal communications officer, who left the palace shortly after the birth of Archie, said, "We were essentially blind. Normally, you prepare for the birth of a royal baby weeks in advance. This time, we were told to sit tight, expect a statement, and not inquire further." It was bizarre. We didn't know what to tell the press because we didn't know anything ourselves. When Archie's birth was eventually announced, it came in a single pre-written statement released after the child had allegedly already been born. There were no official timings. No traditional appearance on the hospital steps. No visible security detail at a hospital. It was as if the birth had occurred in a void, and that void only widened with time. Even Meghan's closest palace allies remained unusually vague. Statements about her pregnancy were always surface level, absent of the warmth and enthusiasm that typically accompany such milestones within the family. The Queen, in particular, was noticeably muted in her public commentary. When she did reference the birth, it was in brief, ceremonial phrases, never elaborating, never gushing, never recalling personal interactions with the newborn. More tellingly, the Queen did not attend Archie's christening, a departure from previous royal tradition. Instead, a small, closed ceremony was held, with no public guest list and no clear images of attendees. Several senior royals were absent. Official photos released to mark the event were limited, stylized, and carefully cropped. One courtier later admitted, there was a feeling that something wasn't being said. And in the palace, when something isn't being said, it usually means it's true. Even Prince William, known for his discipline and loyalty to royal unity, appeared strained during interactions with Meghan and Harry in the months following Archie's birth. Body language analysts picked up on the growing stiffness between the brothers, especially during public events. Behind closed doors, insiders said William raised concerns. One confidant claimed that William asked direct questions about the delivery and received vague, rehearsed answers that didn't satisfy him. It was around this time that Meghan and Harry began to distance themselves from Kensington Palace. They launched their own Instagram account, separated from the joint office with William and Kate, and began restructuring their communication strategy. Staff described the shift as an unraveling, a clear sign they no longer wanted oversight or accountability. Perhaps the most unsettling piece of insider testimony came from a former maternity nurse who had worked at one of the hospitals rumored to be involved in Meghan's delivery. She spoke anonymously to a European magazine, saying she had been unofficially warned not to ask about the Duchess when staffing schedules were arranged. It was strange, she said. Usually, births involving public figures are handled with discretion, but not secrecy. This was complete lockdown. All these quiet revelations, pieced together, form a narrative that extends far beyond gossip. This wasn't just public curiosity running wild. These were professionals, some of whom had served the monarchy for decades, acknowledging a disconnect between what they saw and what they were told. They didn't point fingers. They didn't accuse directly. But their silence, their resignations, and their strategic distancing spoke volumes. The palace itself, bound by protocol and legacy, never publicly addressed the theories. But it also never offered transparency that could have dispelled them. And within that silence, insiders began to break rank, not with loud accusations, but with careful, deliberate revelations. The kind that only surface when people feel morally compelled to speak. When Jennifer Beals uttered her now infamous statement, she didn't open the door to a conspiracy. She stepped into a room that palace insiders had already quietly constructed. From the beginning, Prince Harry cast himself in the role of protector. The minute Meghan Markle entered his world, he became more than a husband-in-waiting or a prince. He became a shield. Against the press, against the public, against even his own family. He once said he was haunted by the memory of his mother being chased to her death, and that he would not allow the same forces to consume his wife. That statement was met with applause, empathy, and widespread understanding. But over time, that protection began to look less like loyalty and more like silence. A silence that grew louder with each unanswered question. During Meghan's pregnancy, Harry was noticeably restrained in interviews. He gave the usual smiles, made lighthearted remarks, and expressed joy about fatherhood. But he avoided elaboration. When asked about due dates or preparations for fatherhood, his responses were brief and vague. While it's not unusual for royals to guard their privacy, Harry's reluctance stood out, especially when contrasted with how open he had once been about personal grief, trauma, and family issues. At a charity event just weeks before Meghan's supposed due date, Harry was asked by a journalist how they were preparing for the baby. He smiled awkwardly and replied, "We're just taking it day by day." That was all. No follow-up, no warmth, no visible excitement that typically accompanies first-time fathers. It was a sharp contrast to William's eagerness when Kate was pregnant, or even Charles's poetic musings when Diana carried William. Some dismissed Harry's brevity as nerves or discomfort with the media, but palace insiders noted a change in him, not just his tone, but his presence. He became withdrawn, more defensive, and increasingly inaccessible, even to long-trusted aides. Harry stopped speaking off the cuff, one former staffer recalled. It was as if every word had to be rehearsed, cleared, or avoided entirely. He didn't want to slip. This self-censorship extended to how he interacted with Meghan in public. Many observed that he rarely touched her bump, never commented on it spontaneously, and kept his physical gestures tightly controlled. Photos of the two often showed Meghan holding her stomach prominently, while Harry's hands remained at his side or behind his back. At engagements, he often stood slightly behind or beside her, as if unsure of how to participate in the public display of her pregnancy. One moment in particular stood out. During the formal photo call after Archie's birth, Harry held the baby while Meghan stood beside him. His expression was subdued, neither joyful nor overwhelmed, but oddly measured. He spoke softly to the press, describing parenthood as amazing, but his eyes lacked the sparks seen in so many new fathers. Meghan, meanwhile, stood smiling in a white dress with a flat stomach and high heels, showing none of the physical toll associated with childbirth. The scene was polished but emotionally muted. Analysts later described Harry as detached and reserved, not words typically associated with a man introducing his firstborn. That press call marked a turning point. It should have been the culmination of joy. Instead, it added fuel to the fire. Online observers dissected every second, noting Harry's restrained demeanor and his apparent discomfort. They questioned why he seemed so careful, so unwilling to emote, and more importantly, why he never spoke about the labor, the hospital, or the birth experience in any detail. Even during their revealing interview with Oprah in 2021, a conversation that laid bare family rifts, racism allegations, and mental health struggles, Harry was notably guarded when it came to discussing Meghan's pregnancy. He never described witnessing the birth, never mentioned the delivery room, never recalled the feeling of holding Archie for the first time. These are the kinds of details that fathers usually share with tenderness. Instead, Harry stayed quiet, deferring always to Meghan's version of events. Was this protectiveness? Or was it something else? Some believe Harry knew the truth all along, that Archie was born via surrogate and that Meghan's pregnancy was a carefully constructed illusion. They suggest that his silence was strategic, born out of love and obligation, that he remained tight-lipped to maintain the image, to protect the family he had chosen to build. If true, that would explain his emotional restraint. It would explain why he never looked fully comfortable during public bump-cradling sessions or addressed the pregnancy with natural affection. Others argue Harry may not have known at first, that the illusion, if there was one, was created before he fully understood the extent of it. That by the time doubts crept in, it was too late to challenge the narrative publicly. To do so would have created chaos, scandal, and possibly the end of their union. In that version, Harry isn't complicit, he's cornered. There's also the possibility that Harry believed wholeheartedly in the illusion, that he accepted everything Meghan told him without question because that's what love demanded of him. This would align with his past behavior. He has always distrusted the press, disliked institutional scrutiny, and sought refuge in rebellion. Meghan gave him purpose, and questioning her would have felt like betrayal, not just of her, but of the future he had built with her. Body language experts have tried to read into Harry's reactions during pregnancy events. Some observed a lack of synchronous behavior. At the Sydney Opera House, when Meghan placed her hands on her belly for a photo, Harry looked away. At the British Fashion Awards, when her bump was heavily pronounced, he stood at a distance, smiling but never touching. At other times, his gaze was downward, his smile thin, his posture guarded. These are not definitive signs, but they added to the growing perception that he wasn't fully immersed in the pregnancy experience. Those close to the royal family also noted that Harry didn't talk about the pregnancy off the record either. During prior pregnancies in the family, William had shared tidbits with staff, made jokes with aides, even sought advice from other fathers. Harry, by contrast, was tight-lipped. Staff described the atmosphere as tense and off-limits. One aide said, "It was the elephant in the room. No one dared mention the baby unless Harry brought it up first." And he rarely did. In the months following Archie's birth, Harry remained fiercely protective. When news outlets questioned details about the birth certificate, or when social media erupted over photos that seemed digitally altered, Harry's team responded with carefully worded legal notices. Not denials, just threats. The tone was clear: do not probe. Yet, for all that protection, Harry never directly addressed the growing rumors. He never took the opportunity to disprove them with clarity. Not one candid photo of Meghan at home during her pregnancy was released. No medical statements. No testimonials from doctors. No spontaneous moments of joy captured by friends or family. Just controlled content, curated messaging, and polished silence. And that silence has consequences. To this day, Harry remains the one person who could dispel the moon bump theory definitively. One heartfelt recollection, one detailed account of the delivery, one mention of the hospital room or the midwife or the moment Archie was born would shift public perception. But that has never come. Instead, the silence has deepened the suspicion. Some believe he will never speak, because to speak would unravel more than just the pregnancy narrative. It would expose a lie so large it would call into question everything they have built since stepping down from royal duties. Their brand, their activism, their image, all built on the foundation of family, love, and shared struggle. If that foundation is cracked, what remains? Prince Harry's silence is no longer just personal, it is now a part of the story itself. And as long as that silence remains, so will the questions. Because sometimes, what someone doesn't say speaks louder than anything they could ever put into words. There was a time when Meghan Markle was considered Hollywood royalty even before she married into the British royal family. She wasn't A-list by the industry's traditional standards, she wasn't headlining blockbuster films or commanding seven-figure deals, but she had something just as valuable: mystique. Meghan was an actress who moved through red carpet circles with grace, always hovering on the edge of breakout fame.